I'm Mary Allison Brown. I'm a mental health therapist and a coach, and I'm on a mission to redefine self care. Welcome back to Self-Care Redefined. Today, we are so excited to have Alison Stockton with us from Vibrant Balanced Health to talk about the first pillar of the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. The 5 pillars of foundational self-care is an evidence-based framework of simple things that you can do to support mental and emotional health and well-being, simple things that you can do to take care of yourself without it becoming an overwhelming part of your day. The 5 pillars, just as a refresher, are nutrition, sleep, movement, mindfulness, and reflection. And Alison is here to talk about the nutrition pillar. Alison is a functional medicine practitioner, eating psychology coach, optimum nutritionist, and integrative health coach. You have so many credentials. So Alison is going to share with us everything you need to know about how to really lock in this nutrition pillar. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with your audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited because this is, as I was telling you before we hit record, not my area of expertise. I always just kind of say with the nutrition piece, are you eating food that makes you feel good? But tell us a little bit more about that. Why and how? What do we need to know about how food impacts mood, energy, mental health, all of those things?
Yeah, so it's changed so much since food became industrialized, and us as humans have changed. The way that we breathe, the way that we digest, the way that our internal organs are functioning has changed so much in the last 200 to 300 years because of things like sugar imports and has come into the world. Sugar is like taxed so heavily now because it's known to disrupt people's health and well-being, and it's quite an addictive source, and it has no nutritional value whatsoever. And some people, when we talk about fruit, people go, oh, but there's all sugars. Yes, but fruit has vitamins and minerals and flavonoids and polyphenols, and sugar has nothing. It just disrupts your insulin and disrupts your blood sugar and can make you go a little bit crazy if you're not having it. So there's lots of different things to look at. However, what are the basic principles of eating healthfully, and I say healthfully, not healthily, it's just to eat real food. It's to keep it really simple and to eat real food. So, I have lots of clients who come to me and they start off and we look at their beige buffet, I like to call it. So, it might just be that, well, I start my day with toast, or I start my day with a bagel, or start my day with cereal. Okay, how does lunch look? Well, I have a sandwich and I may have some potato chips and I might have a soda and might have an apple in there. So that's the only bit of color that's in there. And then what about dinner? Well, that's, usually pasta or something. I was like, okay. So your average day is a beige buffet, and within what you've explained to me, nothing constitutes actual real food because everything's being produced in a factory or a mill, or, all processed foods. And it's not healing your body. So that in itself can disrupt our gut microbiome. So I know you want to keep it really simple, so I don't want to go too sciencey for all of your listeners, but we have microbiome all over our body, like trillions and trillions and trillions of microbiome. It's not just in our gut, it's on our skin, it's in our mouth, it's all over our body. And when we're eating things that are food-like substances, we're disrupting our microbiome constantly. So that means that we're disrupting our cells as well, because our cells rejuvenate and regenerate. You will know this because on a cellular level, for mindfulness, and as we heal our brain and we go into a more positive talk and so on and so forth, if we continue to be in a positive state for at least 21 days or more, we can change a habit. Mm-hmm. But that also 28 days is when we change our cellular level. So if you are wanting to break a habit and break an old pattern, you have to really focus on being consistent with something for 28 days. So I never use the word diet because most people now associate that with restriction, losing weight, and then going crazy because they feel deprived.
Mhm.
So it's like, well, as soon as day one hits, well, I had to go for the potato chips, and I had to have a soda, and I had to have this, and this, but I'm on a diet. It's like, well, it was day one. Let's shift the mindset. Let's make it simple. Instead of thinking about what you're taking out, think about all the goodness that you're adding in.
I love that tip.
So the beige buffet, as we've said, it disrupts your mood because it disrupts your gut microbiome and the microbiome all over your body. It increases bacteria. So people who eat a highly refined diet with white refined flour, it's got no fiber in it, white refined flours, white sugars, processed cookies, baked goods, and so on and so forth, they haven't got any nutrient rich values in them. So there's no fiber in there. There's no real protein. You might have some, the glutinous zonulin, which is in protein, which affects the body. Many people can't digest it and have a reaction with something called zonulin. But again, I'm not going to go too deep into that. When you eat sugar, as I've said, there's calories in it. There isn't fat in it, but people gain weight because they eat sugar. The brain is stimulated by this sugar instantly. You've disrupted your blood sugar levels, and within an hour or so, you want more of that same thing. So it's also affected not just the bacteria in your mouth, which has that taste in it, it's affected the hippocampus in the brain, which is like the reward system that then goes, oh, I've just got my energy up, but now it's dipped. But if I eat sugar, I'll be rewarded and my energy is going to come back up. So I just keep going through this, instead of zigging and zagging in a good way, I'm just zigging and zagging and not really getting where I need to be because my mood is down, it crashes, then it spikes up, then I'm going to be agitated because the mood comes down. And that's what high refined foods does to us. So it's disrupting the way that we have a reward system. It's disrupting the taste in our mouth. It's disrupting how we actually eat and can change our facial structure if we're not eating, chewing, and,
Oh, wow.
using our face as it was meant to be. But also, as we're ingesting that, the gut is the second brain. So it's disrupting the blood-brain barrier and it disrupts the mood. So a high gluten diet, high refined diet can actually create an increase in depression. So especially right now with the pandemic, with kids being homeschooled, everybody's working from home, where can we go? There's no escapism. So women particularly have been using the refrigerator as an escape. But actually, it's not their ally, it's become their enemy because they're going to the refrigerator to think about how they can feel better. So what can they self-medicate with? Is it more cookies? Okay, you might not have cookies in the refrigerator, but it's going to be, okay, I'm just going to make a sandwich, or oh, I've already had a sandwich, but I'll have another sandwich because it's quick and it's easy and I can just fill myself up. Or can I take some chocolate out of the fridge? Maybe it's not dark chocolate and it's, really crappy food sources. And so that refrigerator needs to be redefined. It needs to have simple foods in it, simple foods that are foods, not like food like substances. So none of the boxed ready meals, they need to kind of like be gotten rid of. All of the prepackaged foods that are in there. Even yogurts can have a high content of sugar. They have fillers, they have bulking agents in them to thicken them out, thickeners, all of those things. So, when we thought 15, 20 years ago, yogurt and low-fat yogurt's really healthy. Actually, it's not, because it's got all of these sugars and additives in them. So you're better off having something like natural Greek yogurt if your gut can tolerate it. So the disruption is when we eat highly refined foods and you're eating food like substances, or you're eating on the go, or you're eating in a highly stressed state, this is disrupting how we're able to absorb and digest our food. And that's why, just going on a diet isn't the answer.
I think that is so wonderful what you said, the eating when stressed piece. So obviously we know that people do emotionally eat, people do stress eat. And when you were talking about that with the quarantine and how people were going to the refrigerator for comfort, I see that a lot with people where it becomes another pattern, another self-destructive behavior. And I've also heard, and I wanted to ask you about this, that when you eat, when you're stressed eating, that the levels of cortisol, I think this is for women specifically, the levels of cortisol in your body make you store that as fat. Is that true, or am I getting that?
It's the same for men and women. So what
Okay.
happens is if you're gaining weight, it's actually the estrogen. So estrogen is triggered by a higher level of cortisol as well, which is a hormone. So cortisol is a hormone, insulin is a hormone, and so is estrogen. But there's three types of estrogen. But what happens if you're carrying adipose tissue? If you're already carrying a little bit extra weight and you're highly stressed, then yes, your cortisol spikes. But also what happens is estrogen sits in fat pockets because it feels safe. So it doesn't need to excrete itself. It doesn't need to metabolize. So it's just going to stay there. And then this adipose tissue becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're actually creating more of a toxic reaction as well with your body. So men and women have estrogen. So your listeners are women predominantly. So let's focus on that. But when you're eating in a stress state, if you're eating, it doesn't matter whether you're eating a healthy green smoothie or you're eating a bowl of pasta. When you're stressed, that healthy green smoothie, okay, it's better than the pasta, but it's not really going to benefit you in any way because you're too highly stressed. So you're not able to absorb, digest, and really utilize the nutrients that you're having from that super green smoothie. Whereas the pasta, when you're stressed, you've got a higher state of cortisol in you, you're going to bring that in, and it's going to just, the insulin reaction, you can start to become insulin resistant. So you're not able to utilize the glucose that you take from that food. So glucose works in two ways. It either goes into the blood or it goes into the cell. So if you're insulin resistant, it's not going into a cellular level. It's just like giving you a spike, but then you're storing this weight. So like you say, the mindfulness part of it. And sometimes people are going, oh my God, I'm just grabbing the smoothie and I'm going in the car and I'm stressing now to get the kids back to school, or I'm stressing to get whatever. So if you're doing that in a stress state, your cortisol is again high. So cortisol rises within the first 30 minutes of when you wake up. I know you've already mentioned sleep. So your cortisol rises within 30 minutes. So if you are one of these women, and we're predominantly talking about food, but if you're a woman that goes, right, I've got to get up, I've got to do a HIIT training session, I've got to work out really hard, I've got to beast myself. Actually, what you're doing, if you're already in a really stressed state, you're spiking that cortisol even higher. You're putting more strain on the adrenal cortex. You're putting more strain onto your thyroid. And then you're putting more strain onto the insulin. So when people say, but I'm not eating anything and I'm working out like an idiot and, nothing's happening, it's because of all of these different, quite simple, yet it seems quite complex issues of how the body works. So in order to be able to absorb and digest the nutrients that you want, it's a case of having the smoothie and making sure you are calming down when you're having that smoothie, not gulping it down because it's a smoothie. It's like, okay, if I was to put all of this ingredients on a plate or in a bowl, how long would it actually take me to eat it? How long, my smoothies could have broccoli, they could have spinach, they could have berries, they could have half a banana, they could have some avocado. If that was a salad, how long would it take me to eat that? And this is another thing that many women make the mistake, that they're eating it in such a rush that they're so stressed their body isn't able to digest it. So if you're having that smoothie and you are taking it in the car, just make sure it's a sip and it's calm in the car. And if the kids are screaming, then just leave it. Don't have it until you're back in the car by yourself.
That makes so much sense to me. When I talk about the mindfulness pillar, I actually explain it to people that for this framework, it doesn't necessarily mean a formal mindfulness practice, although it could. What it really means is, what are you doing to activate your parasympathetic nervous system? Because that's our rest and digest response.
Yeah,
So hearing
exactly.
you say all of this, I'm really putting that together that, wow, taking a minute to do some deep breaths before you have the smoothie could really improve your body's ability to access the nutrients in that.
Absolutely. And it also allows you to absorb and digest the nutrients in it, which is going to change your mood, because norepinephrine, epinephrine, those two chemicals, the dopamine that you're getting, especially if you put raw cacao in your smoothie, I say green, but I'm always adding raw cacao or some maca, which are superfoods. That's helping you in your brain and releasing dopamine and releasing those feel good factors, but not if you're in a stressed state. So it is about, calming that sympathetic nervous system down, bringing the parasympathetic system back into action, and making sure you can kind of crush it. It's the same when eating at lunchtime. If you're eating after you've just had a really intense email and you're so angry and you're eating and you're shoveling the food down, it's the same response. If you're eating at the table at dinner when everyone is so stressed and is just arguing, it's the same thing, especially if you're trying to lose weight, or especially if you're trying to enhance your health. They are not healthy eating hygiene habits. So it needs to be really trying to calm those situations down. That's why the Italians, the Spanish, the Argentinians, the Mediterranean, they sit and it's no problem, and we take a time, and it doesn't matter if it takes 2 hours, and we'll have a glass of wine, and it's just in a calm, relaxed state. And they are the healthiest regions in the entire world. So it is a case of let's just calm it down a little bit. We don't need to be in a rush so much.
Yes, that just makes me think of, I went to Paris with my sister a few years ago, and we realized that the way that we really outed ourselves as tourists, I mean, besides when we were speaking, but when we were just being, was that we always had a to-go coffee cup, and nobody else had a to-go coffee cup ever. It was not a thing that was happening. People were sitting in cafes and enjoying their coffee, and enjoying each other's companies. And we were just in, our American mentality of like, go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And I love that perspective.
Well, even here, because I remember when I was in the States, it's when I met you, when we were in Santa Barbara, and I was speaking to one of the friends that I was staying with, and I said, oh yeah, the McDonald's cafe. She went, what? You go to McDonald's? I was like, yeah, we have cafes. Like, they have cafes, and they have espresso bars, and they have a proper coffee shop in the McDonald's in Europe, because they had to catch on with everything. So, if we go, we sit and we have a coffee, and yeah, it's a very different thing. And people will probably ask, well, what about coffee? Coffee, again, is great if you're not really, really highly stressed. I'll just point on that as we're talking about that situation. So if you are highly stressed and you have, you've got stress on your adrenals because you've been in sympathetic nervous system mode for quite some time, then coffee can trigger the adrenals and can cause them to slightly slow down their function because they're too stressed. So coffee in itself is great because, again, flavonoids, it's a healthy bean. It's grown in the ground. It's not filtered. So it's not processed unless it's gone through a process, but it's not as a processed food source. So, it has polyphenols and it has health benefits. But again, like every food, it's not for everybody. So it can trigger a response that's slightly allergic, or it can stimulate a rapid heart rate, and it could cause you not to sleep. Even if you have it 10 o'clock in the morning, if you're not sleeping at night, that could be down to the coffee. It also could be down to the fact if you're having coffee and you still feel extremely exhausted, then that in itself is an indication that your adrenals have got some stress on there and your cortisol is too high. So lots of people go for like Red Bull or coffee if they're highly stressed because they want to stay awake and they want to keep things going. And it actually has the reverse and very detrimental effects if you're doing it in that state. So like your Paris situation, sit, enjoy, sip the coffee, realize that it's part of a relaxation, not to just keep you on the go.
Yes. That also tells me why I love getting up in the morning before the kids to have my coffee and just enjoying it in silence. Exactly. That feels really nice. Yeah. I love when you said, I'm not sure if you said this exactly, but you said something about redefining, and I wrote down refrigerator redefined because I love that.
Yeah.
What part of my mission is to really redefine self-care, because I think that the way that we think about it is all wrong. And people often feel like, self-care would be nice if I had the time, or I can't afford to go to the spa or things like that. And so that's where this framework really comes from is it's the things that you do, the choices that you make throughout your day, right? What are you putting into your body? You get to control that.
This
Are
is
you moving?
self-care. Drinking water is
Yes.
self-care.
I have my big hydro flask
Looking at
right here
your,
too.
when you just said about redefining your refrigerator, it's like I encourage all your listeners to go to your refrigerator or your cupboards or your freezer and just open it up and look at how many things are in a packet. Because
Mm.
packaged food, when it's in plastic, also increases the estrogen levels for women, particularly, and men. And increased estrogen is very disruptive hormone, especially for breast tissue, for potential breast cancers, all of these things. Anything in plastic packaging increases the estrogen dominance for women.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That is really good. And if it's in a package and in plastic, it's likely to be really highly processed.
Well, you know what? And
Part of the beige buffet.
even if your veggies and your fruits are in plastic,
Mm.
ideally they would be organic anyway, which we haven't really spoken about. But if your fruits and veggies come in plastic, get them out of the plastic straight away, get them into a sink, wash them, because if they are not organic, they're going to be covered with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, which again are disruptive for the human body, and it causes oxidative stress. So we've talked about the parasympathetic system, but
Mm.
oxidative stress increases the stress signals in the body as well, because
That
they're
is
toxic.
that is such a great tip. Do you want to speak about the organic piece? Why is that so important?
Sure. So, as I said at the very beginning, the way that we eat right now has become, since the industrial era, where everything became, factory and processed, we've started to farm. So, farming came about a few thousand years ago, but it's changed over the years. And obviously, now every country has different FDA regulations. Um, but there's been a certain allowance for pesticides, as I said, fungicides and herbicides, and just toxic products being put onto the fruits and vegetables, basically to enable them to grow without bugs and things eating them. But what happens is the soil that it's growing in is reducing in their mineral content. So the earth and humans are made up of minerals as well: zinc, copper, iron, magnesium, calcium. All of these things are in soil as well as a human. And what's happening is, as the ground is being over farmed and overpopulated with herbicides, fungicides, and so on and so forth, our foods have become less nutrient rich. So it's not the same as biting into an apple 200 years ago. You're not going to get the same from it. You'll probably get toxins on the outside, so it really needs to be washed. So when you think about organic, they not only don't spray their products with all of these nasty toxins, which you wouldn't take a spoonful and put it in your mouth. You wouldn't take a spoonful of herbicide or pesticides or whatever and eat it, but actually that's what's on our food unless it is grown organic. And I do realize, and I think America is one of the less produced fruits and vegetables in the world for organic. America usually has to import it. So again, that comes with something completely different, that it's traveled.
Sure.
However, if you can get to your organic markets, and I know that many American states are, they have like farmers markets and veggie markets and things like that. So if that's close to you, I urge everybody to go and do that, because then your food that you're eating is enriched with minerals. And that's why so many people now have to take supplements, especially if they're on the beige buffet and they're not eating all of the veggies and things.
Yeah.
They take supplements to counteract the lack of magnesium, the lack of zinc, the lack of B vitamins and everything else that's in their body. Whereas we would never have had to supplement if our food sources were still enriched with the minerals that we get from the earth.
Oh, yes, that makes so much sense. We try very hard to eat organic and we actually just completely cut out gluten for a while and refined sugar. I'm glad that you touched on the sugar and fruit because that misconception drives me bonkers. Uh, my stepson a couple times had said, "You guys failed because this has sugar in it." And we were like teaching him how to like read the labels, read the ingredients, look at the added sugars because we were never trying to cut out, sugars that are naturally occurring in
Yeah.
our apples or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's really important too, just to kind of think about our food choices, because it is a
Yeah.
choice and we do have a choice, and it's more accessible than people think that it
It
is.
is. And, I'm plant-based because I think so many people think, well, it's protein comes from meat, so I have to have eggs in the morning. Or, I know in America, particularly, it's the chicken sausages or whatever it might be that lots of people have. And I'm like, okay. Uh, so eggs are great. You don't have to have them every breakfast time. Chicken, fish, beef, all of that stuff. Yes, it's great. Veal, buffalo, all of that, ostrich. They're all protein sources from animals. But what's being forgotten about is how we used to live, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. There wasn't always a wild boar or a buffalo to catch. So
Is a
we
choice.
had to go we had to go and get berries and nuts and vegetables and things that grew like wild and just, were there.
Mhm.
And that's how we were able to, as a human race, survive and thrive, is because of those resources that were available. So, for example, a vegan diet doesn't necessarily work for everybody because of, well, if you look back through history, we were never completely vegan because there would always be some animal source when we need it. So that's where you get B12 from. So if you're a vegan that's feeling really lethargic and not energized, it's because if you're not taking a supplement of B12, because it only comes from animal sources, then you're not going to be as healthy as a vegan as perhaps somebody who eats animal sources. But that said, you don't have to be one or the other. You can combine it. You can be like a vegan for 3 days and omnivore for 2 days and a pescatarian for 1 day. It's like all about human choice. It's not right or it's not wrong. It's just how you thrive as a human is listening to your body and listening to how you intuitively feel. So, for example, if you feel a little bit of a low ebb, that could be your iron. So if for a woman, especially if your menstruation time is really heavy and you're really struggling for a week, then that's because your ferritin and your iron drop down really low. And if you're not upping that for at least 7 to 10 days afterwards, you're just fighting a loop of a battle where, you're going to go, okay, well, that's 5 days. I'm now 15 days. In another 10 days, it's going to come back again. Hang on a minute. And then I'm going to be in that cycle. So where am I at? What do I need to add in? I need to add some more iron-rich foods, or I perhaps need to get a ferritin, because there's 2 different types. Ferritin is transporter for iron. So maybe I need to get a ferritin supplement. Let me speak to my physician and say, this is what's happening. And they may be able to prescribe something. Or it could be that your zinc is really low. As I said, magnesium, all of these minerals that are in food that people are missing out on is affecting the health. It also affects the mood, because if you do have a heavy menstruation, 3, 4, or even 5 days, and then you're so exhausted. So what you do is you go to the carby rich foods or the sugary rich food to try and get that false energy. You're then going into a more of a depressed state because your brain isn't having any real food to stimulate it. So if
Yes. It becomes
essential,
a
yeah, it's a cycle,
cycle.
but it's simple. Let's keep it simple. Real food. So EFAs, essential fatty acids, wild salmon, oily fish, sardines, mackerel, even adding some eggs in. It doesn't have to be an egg every day, or, it could be an egg every other day. Nuts. So again, nuts are rich, particularly Brazil nuts. Lots and lots of women have undiagnosed thyroidism and thyroiditis. And we're missing selenium because, again, selenium isn't available in the foods. But if you feel that you're going crazy, or you feel like you've got brain fog, or you feel like you've got cold hands, or you feel like all these different things, it's a signal of thyroid. If you're constipated and can't go to the toilet and you're constantly bloated and you keep eating the same food, wondering why you're not getting any better, and then your mood starts to, suppress, you're also suppressing your immunity. So selenium comes from Brazil nuts. So you could eat like 4 to 6 Brazil nuts a day, and that's going to boost your selenium, which helps to stimulate a good responsive thyroid as well. So it's about creating this balance and always having, I use the word of rainbow, and that doesn't mean those, like, what are those rainbow cereals you get over in the
Gosh,
States?
Lucky Charms.
That's the one. Yeah.
Not that.
I don't mean that. I mean, like, in the morning, if it's not a smoothie, it could be eggs and spinach, or it could be, some hummus and cucumber, and like a very like Lebanese style breakfast, for example, hummus, cucumber, tomatoes, those kind of things. Like shakshuka is amazing. So shakshuka is peppers and tomatoes with eggs dropped in it and baked in the oven. It could be overnight oats. So oats are great because they're full of fiber. So they're going to fill you through. They're going to balance out your blood sugar levels as well. So I know oats, you don't call it oats. What do you, oatmeal, I think you call it, don't you, in the States?
Oatmeal, yeah, but overnight oats.
Yeah. So you could soak them overnight. You can even make bircher pots. So you put like chia seeds and flaxseed. You want to grind them. So again, that releases the fiber. You're also going to get some omega-6s from that as well. Omega-3 is really, really important. That comes from your oily fish, which is, really healthy for the body because we can't make omega-3 ourselves. So it has to come from a food source.
Well, you said something that I think is so important, and I want to ask you to expand on just a little bit, because you said it's so important to listen to your body. And when it comes to mental health and self-care, I'm constantly saying, if you take nothing else from anything I say ever, learn how to check in with yourself. But when it comes to nutrition and when it comes to food, I think that everybody is sort of bombarded by conflicting messages and people get very disconnected from their body.
Yeah.
So if somebody is sort of new to this and is saying, oh my goodness, I'm on the beige buffet and I do want to change that, how do they start learning to tune into their body and listening to what
Start simple, simplify to amplify. So if you're having that beige buffet, ditch one of the meals for a week. So switch up the breakfast. Like I just said, it could be a smoothie, it could be eggs and spinach, it could be something different. Switch one of the meals. Once you get into that habit and you've started to reduce that gluten and you start to feel a little bit better, switch up another meal. So it doesn't have to, some people are all or nothing. Some people don't want to go all straight away. Some people work better that way. So again, listen to your body. How am I feeling? Has my bloating started to slow down now that I'm not eating so much gluten? Am I feeling better because I'm drinking more water? Does my skin feel better that I'm drinking more water? Do I feel less dehydrated in my actual physical body, as well as, when I say physical, I mean skin, hair, eyes, that kind of thing? Because if you're feeling in a low mood, remember we are 70% water. So if you're not drinking your 2 or plus, depending on how tall you are, if you're not drinking 2 and above liters of water a day and your body starts to dehydrate, then if you remember, I mentioned cells earlier on, we are not hydrating those cells either. So it's like having dry sponges all over your body. And actually, we want them hydrated. We don't want them so hydrated that they're overhydrated, which is equally as damaging, but we want to be making sure that we're hydrated. So I have lots of clients come to me that maybe they're not even drinking 1 glass of water a day. So again, simplify. Okay, you're drinking 1 glass. Can you make that 1.5? Can you then make that 2 glasses? The following week, can we make it 3?
Yes, and you're working up to that.
Yeah, because if somebody has only been drinking this for as long as they can remember, and suddenly they're so fed up with going to the toilet, because obviously your body's got to adjust as well. Your body will utilize the water, but straight away your bladder won't know what to do. It will just be like, I just need to go to the toilet quite a lot, because it's not able to disperse where it needs to be. It's like,
yeah, your body,
it's got to just filtrate.
Our bodies are so remarkably adaptable. So if we haven't been drinking enough water, we adapt, right? So it makes sense that then if we are trying to change that, we have to adapt again. I love when you said simplify to amplify. I want to share that one little sentence on your website that I mentioned before we started, because I think it's so great. And you say, as a woman and as a female entrepreneur, often our health can get pushed to the back of our everyday life. This does not and should not be the case when you learn how to implement simple and achievable methods to improve your well-being. That's so in line with everything that I talk about when it comes to self-care. And I just want to sort of ask you maybe 1 or 2 last quick tips on how to really focus on nutrition in a sustainable way without becoming overwhelmed. I love the simplify to amplify, but any other little tips I would love to hear.
So, like I said before, make switches. When we're thinking right now from an eating psychology point of view, emotional eating or disordered eating, think about what you can do. The more junk you eat, the worse you feel. The worse you feel, if you're in that spiral, it's just going to continue. So just get to the point where you think, Mel Robbins is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go. Think about, okay, slow it down though. When you open that refrigerator and you're going to go for the crap, it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I really want this? Why am I going to have this? What is it going to make me feel like in 2 hours from now? And are you going to replay the cycle of sometimes guilt and emotion? So that's the first thing. Second thing is make sure you redefine that refrigerator. Get the greens, get in the purples, the berries, the rich foods, because that's full of beta carotene. Beta carotene converts to vitamin A, which our body needs, and there's a lot missing from it. And I'm going to give you some just simple foods that to add in. Dark chocolate is one thing. So if you're eating junk chocolate, try and switch to dark chocolate, so 85% plus. That dark chocolate, just 2 pieces of that, really stimulates that reward system in your brain, like we spoke about before, which releases dopamine and oxytocin. So it gives you a really good factor, and you don't actually want to shove it down your throat. You're quite it's actually just it's like take a bite of it, take a break of it. It's the same way like Swiss chocolate and Belgian chocolate. You literally one Belgian chocolate and it's enough because it's so rich. But dark chocolate, make that switch from that. Add in bananas and avocado, so you've got lots of potassium, so it's also boosting. It's the support of magnesium as well, and you've B6 as well, as I said already. Oats, so you're getting fiber in that. Try and look for gluten-free. And the reason they're gluten-free is because they're not then grown on ground that had wheat grown on it before. That's what makes them gluten-free, because they haven't been processed, grown on the same ground. Lots of berries, strawberries, blueberries. Blueberries can actually, they are so filled with polyphenols and antioxidants, as are strawberries. They actually help to reverse any aging and deterioration in your eyes. So, my own mother, who is 80, I made sure that she had blueberries, at least a cup of blueberries every single day, and she reversed her the lenses in her eyes, in her glasses. She had to less, and then she was managing to heal her conjunctivitis. So berries are really important. Really great to have berries every single day. Again, yes, they do have sugar, so sugar needs to be utilized. So it's important that you're moving. So if you're upping something, you still need to move. That's one of the things with everything that helps with detoxification. If you want to be able to utilize these nutrients and vitamins and minerals you're putting in your body, you've got to be able to move your body so you can circulate it, not just sit stagnant and sedentary. So movement's really important. Salmon, as I said, or oily fish like mackerel, sardines, even anchovies, but anchovies can be quite salty. They're really good to add in every day. They've got EFA, which is essential fatty acids. Fermented foods is great for the gut health. I know now that kefir is everywhere. Kefir used to be like a little kept secret just from Russia and the Ukraine and Turkey. They used to have kefir all the time, but it's spread now. It's global. It's little cultures, so you can get the cultures and grow them yourself, or you can buy kefir products. But as ever, if you're buying kefir products from the store, please just look at the label on the back. Check out how much sugar is in there, because it will need sugar and a preservative to hold it in a store. But you can buy kefir cultures from Amazon and you can grow it yourself.
Okay. What about kombucha?
Yeah, kombucha is great. I've got that on my list as well. Kimchi, kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut. But if you're again buying kombucha, look at the sugar content, because the sugar content is going to create more bacteria in your gut.
I have a question about that. So when we were fully cutting out sugar from our diet, we still did sometimes have kombucha. And I feel really confused about this. So hopefully this is helpful to somebody else too. But I went to the website for the kombucha that we buy, and they talked about how you need sugar to make kombucha because it feeds the bacteria. And then that the sugar content on the label, most of that has been eaten by the bacteria. So is that right when I'm reading a label? Because I was confused about that.
It just depends. And again, go back to how your body feels. So if there is too much sugar still within it, because it's going to need something to have a store life on it rather, then just see how you feel, because if you're having like a yeast reaction or you have like candida type symptoms, there could be too much sugar within the kombucha that you're consuming that can affect that, in your mouth, can have thrush or vaginal thrush as well. So again, that all comes down to gut bacteria. So fermented foods are great, but kombucha can tend to have sugar added into it. So things like kimchi, kefir, fermented soy. So soy, I would always say avoid because it's genetically modified. But if it's fermented, it's healthier. It can also boost too much estrogen if you're not having fermented soy and if you're having too much of it. So I would always avoid soy milk because it's usually genetically modified, it's never fermented, and it also will have lots of different additives in. Oat milk, cashew milk, almond milk, they're super easy to make at home. It's just you put a cup of nuts in some water, soak it in the refrigerator overnight, take it out, rinse it, blend it, add some water and strain it. You've got nut milk.
Done.
And it's super easy.
Good. I love it.
Takes 5 minutes. If that in total, that whole 24-hour process takes you an actual total of 5 minutes of being present. And I think, again, just going back to it is keep it simple. I've got a recipe book with lots of different recipes in there because I'm a great believer that, you want to eat healthy, but you don't want to be spending 2 hours in the kitchen unless you're having a dinner party for 30 people and you're doing, a big thing.
We'll put the link to that.
But in there, I've talked about all the superfoods like spirulina, wheatgrass, moringa, acacia berry, raw cacao, all these things, even turmeric and cinnamon. So if you're not having these superfoods in your diet naturally, then these are great to boost your antioxidants and reduce free radicals, which slows down the aging process as well. So it's not just about the normal food, real food, but it's adding in some superfoods as well.
Oh, I love that so much. I've actually been my new coffee order because you talked about coffee being a helpful thing. And the other day we're not doing our completely no sugar anymore, though we are still very mindful of it. And Matt went and got a junky coffee and he was like, they put whipped cream on it and I didn't even ask for it. And I was like, this is everything that's wrong with America. You just get a coffee and it has so much sugar and has so much whipped cream on the top, like, but my new coffee order has been an Americano with oat milk and powdered cinnamon for flavor. Yeah. So I know that I'm adding in a little superfood and I'm not adding any sugar or anything.
Just be careful when it's in the stores, especially like Starbucks and things like that, because they sometimes put sugar mix in the cinnamon like they do with the chocolate. Just check. Sometimes not, but sometimes they might do, because again, we're talking about different regions.
And that's why when you eat at home, you have so much more control over exactly what you're getting. And it's so much easier than I think people think that it is. But
when you eat out, not that we can eat out right now, but when you do eat out, when you start to be more mindful of what you're eating and how healthy you are, then you start to be more wise when you go out, because you're not afraid to ask for the changes. I say, I'm not, what is it? Is it a blooming onion that is big in America?
Gosh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's like 5,000 calories in this blooming onion. It's like, but it's a vegetable. It's like, okay, but it's in batter and then it's dipped in a sauce, and it's deep fried. So yes, it was a vegetable one time. Now it's kind of lost its way along the way.
Now
so it's like, if you,
substance,
if you want to have a Caesar salad, great. Can I have a Caesar salad? But can you put the dressing on the side? Do you have a gluten-free option to the croutons? No. Okay, just leave the croutons out then. Thanks. Can you put avocado on it or something instead?
I've definitely experienced that confidence that comes when you know what you want and what you want to put in your body, and you're more aware of what gets sort of snuck in when you're out in a restaurant.
I think it is. It's that confidence of learning to understand your body. And, when I say intuitive eating, it's like if you can feel that you're getting a little bit sick, you know that your nutrients. I haven't been sick, and I touch wood here, for 8 years. 7 years. 7 years I haven't been sick for. Fingers crossed, touch wood. So it's adding all of those things that are anti-inflammatory and living an anti-inflammatory diet. So adding in ginger, the turmeric or curcumin, cinnamon, all of these anti-inflammatory foods, beetroots, the beta carotenes, all of these things help you to live a sustained, healthy life. But it also helps with reversing aging. Botox is a toxin. And if you're going like, it's okay, I'm going to get old, but I'll get the Botox. Well, what if you can actually do that from the inside out and start to not only just, when your skin and your face is protected, but it's your organs as well. So being vibrant on the inside out is literally about how you're reducing free radicals from the toxins that are around you. And
Not trying to put them in.
Yeah, but when you're not in a parasympathetic state and you're in sympathetic state, that's also toxic because it
Mhm.
creates greater free radicals, and your body has to then fight against that.
Absolutely. And I love just that you keep coming back to checking in with your body, intuitive eating. Like you said at the beginning, the reason why you don't use the word diet is because it becomes so restrictive. And I see so many people doing so many different plans. I have to do keto, I have to do paleo, I'm doing Weight Watchers. And so I have these guidelines and these restrictions. And it just comes back to learning to trust your body
Yeah.
and listening to your body. And the more that you do that, the easier it becomes, right? The louder those signals become from your body.
Yeah, and keto is great, paleo is great, but it's not great all of the time. So many people who they can't sustain, I mean, it's not as drastic as the Atkins diet was. Has been done. Keto actually originated because it was seen to support epileptics
Mm.
because of the way that the blood sugar doesn't spike, and it's a slower releasing process of digesting your food. So you go into ketosis. So it's not wrong, but it's about, well, it might be wrong for you. So
Right.
Ayurvedic diets are not right for everybody because of the different body types, the Vita Pitta. And if you're eating a cold raw food diet and you're not able to digest it, it could be because you're highly stressed, your cortisol and your adrenals. So therefore, you're not able to break these foods down the same way because they're raw and they're cold. So instead, you need warming foods, the same way that a cold person couldn't have the warming foods because that would disrupt them.
I think
We are
all
so
go.
bio individual. You've got to listen. And this is what's so frustrating with the diet scene and women, particularly when they go, oh, but she's done this diet and she got amazing results, but it just didn't work for me. And, well, she's got a really calm way of living, and she does the things that she needs to do, and she takes it easy. You're highly stressed and you're sleeping for 3 hours and you're up with 4 kids and you're running around like a headless chicken and you're trying to do this diet, but actually your cortisol is so high that it's not allowing you to do that. That's why that's not working for you. So it's all of these different things. Well, let's think about going back to the basics. What can I add in? I need to increase my water. I need to increase my nutrients. So I never, ever work with a calorie restriction or a calorie
Oh, I'm
implementation,
so happy to hear you say that.
because it's like, okay, well, look at it. So I'm not sure whether the listeners can see this, or whether it depends whether they're watching on video or not. So go with the rules of literally of thumb. The rule of thumb is, when you eat a meal, it should be 1 thumb of fat, good fats like avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, things that are really rich sources, natural sources of fat. The palm of your hand is protein. So whether that's, a palm of pulses or legumes, or it's a piece of chicken or a couple of eggs or some ground beef. We didn't really talk about meat, but always go for organic meat as well, because that reduces, again, the herbicides, pesticides, all of the toxins, but also the word's just gone out of my head, antibiotics and hormones. So if they're not organic, they will have antibiotics and hormones in to, prevent them from getting sick and grow faster. So a palm of your hand is your protein, the thumb is your fat, and then carbohydrates is a fist. So that could be a cup of brown rice. It could be a cup of quinoa is actually quite a lot. So it could be a sweet potato or something like that. And white potatoes are not bad. They're just not the best thing because they're quite high starch. So if you are prone to not having balanced blood sugar, that can spike it the wrong way. So that's your carbohydrates. And then you can literally just have multiple handfuls of green veggies. So always stick with the basics of those, but you want fiber, greens, protein, fats. That's how your food should be.
Perfect and simple. It's simple, and people
Yeah.
make it so complicated. This has been so amazing. I feel like I could just talk to you all day and learn all the things about nutrition. We will definitely put a link to that recipe book, and I will
Thank
be ordering that today for myself to share because I'm excited to read it, because your philosophy for eating definitely aligns with ours, and you know what you're talking about, and we're kind of winging it. So I would love to learn more and have some more
you.
recipes. Thank you so much for taking the time to
Oh,
do
it's a
this and
pleasure. It's
share
a pleasure.
everything.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.